boy finds a crying baby in an abandoned house and decides to seek help. When investigating, the police makes a shocking discovery. 12-year-old Marcus Wheeler had always been a keen observer. Whether he was riding his bike around the cul-de-sac or inspecting the lines in fallen autumn leaves, he noticed details that most other kids his age would have overlooked. On this particular October afternoon, warm sunlight cut through the crisp air, casting golden streaks across the sidewalks of his suburban neighborhood. The breeze smelled faintly of bonfires, and dried leaves scratched softly across asphalt. Marcus was out running a simple errand for his mother, picking up a carton of milk from the local corner store just a few blocks away. She often said that Marcus's extra pair of eyes helped keep her from forgetting groceries, errands, and just about everything else. He never seemed to complain. The short trip allowed him to explore and feed his curiosity about small details in daily life. He had almost reached the store when something else caught his attention. Someone whispering about Blackwood House. 2 kids around his age stood by a lamppost, huddled close, telling tales of ghosts and strange lights seen in the windows of that old Victorian mansion. Marcus slowed his steps, feigning interest in a nearby notice board so he could overhear the conversation. He caught snippets. Everyone says it's haunted. My older brother saw shadows moving around. It's been empty for years. These stories were not entirely new to Marcus. For as long as he could remember, Blackwood House had been a looming figure at the edge of the neighborhood. A large, dark silhouette with peeling paint, spindly turrets, and a wraparound porch that had weathered many storms. Several residents spoke in hushed tones about odd noises or flickering lights spotted in its windows. Most kids would pass the property quickly on their way to school, but the mansion's grim allure had always been a magnet for Marcus's imagination. He completed his chore at the store, paying for the milk with a few crumpled bills his mother had handed him. On the way back home, each step seemed to steer him closer to the decaying mansion rather than the cozy living room that awaited him. Something about those whispered rumors made him want to see Blackwood House for himself. Perhaps it was the mild rebellion of defying cautionary tales, or simply the irresistible tug of a mystery. Either way, he noticed he was walking faster as the structure came into view. From a distance, Blackwood House looked like a painting abandoned halfway through completion. The outer walls had once been painted a deep green, but time had eroded them into patches of pale gray and flecks of rust red. One of the second-floor windows was boarded up, and the porch railing looked like it could give way under the weight of a single step. Yet, despite its dilapidation, there was an undeniable grandeur to the building. Tall stained-glass windows, even covered in dust, hinted at a once elegant interior. Marcus imagined how it might have appeared decades earlier, filled with warmth, guests, and lively conversation. He paused near the withered front gate. Every instinct told him not to cross the property line. His parents had always warned him about wandering onto abandoned properties. Too dangerous, they said, often pointing to rotting floors, unstable beams, or unguarded wells. Besides, rumors of hauntings were enough to deter most sensible kids. But as he stood there, the grand silence of Blackwood House drew him in. The breeze ruffled his jacket, and a swirl of leaves collected against the porch steps. He noticed an old "No Trespassing" sign, half concealed by overgrown bushes and dangling precariously from a rusty chain-link fence. He could leave now, head home, and enjoy the rest of his afternoon without a second thought. Yet, the thrill of an unanswered question pinned him in place. Could the ghostly stories be true? What was really inside those sagging walls? Marcus found himself placing the carton of milk gently on the sidewalk and peeking through the wrought iron bars of the gate. The property, though clearly neglected, had a peculiar pull, as if it had something to say. Cautiously, he pushed the gate. The hinges let out a long, eerie groan, as though scolding him for disturbing the hush. The wind picked up again, rustling the branches of nearby trees. A single crow perched on an upper windowsill, eyeing Marcus like a silent sentinel. He expected it to caw, but it just stared. He took 2 steps inside the property line. Bits of old gravel crunched beneath his sneakers, and the porch loomed ahead. No lights, no supernatural presence. Just the stark emptiness of a place that had seen better days. He reminded himself he was only there for a closer look at the exterior. There would be no foolish exploration. He wasn't that kind of reckless kid. But just as he started to turn, an unexpected noise drifted out from somewhere deep inside the house. It was faint, almost masked by the rustling leaves, but it sounded like sobbing. Marcus froze. He held his breath, ears straining for a repeat of the noise. Seconds ticked by. Then came another muffled whimper, so soft he almost doubted his hearing. His heart began to pound. He felt adrenaline surge through him. Kids in school told wild stories about ghosts crying in the old mansion, but there was a rawness to this sound that didn't feel like a supernatural moan. It sounded heartbreakingly real. Torn between caution and curiosity, Marcus stepped back. Whatever he had heard, it didn't seem to fit the typical spooky house rumors. Could a person be inside? The idea seemed improbable, yet he couldn't shake the possibility. He picked up the milk carton, deciding to tell his parents about what he'd heard. Rationally, that should have been the end of it. Pass on the information to the adults, let them handle it. But 1,000 questions rattled in his mind, and by the time he reached home, an unshakable feeling had taken hold. Something or someone might need help in that old place. He just didn't know how big of a decision it would be to find out. Marcus could hardly sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he imagined shadowy corridors and the quiet sob that had drifted to him through the autumn air. The next day, he sat at the breakfast table picking at his cereal, mind racing with possibilities. His father, Daniel Wheeler, noticed the subdued mood. "Hey, champ, you feeling all right?" his father asked, concern lacing his voice. Daniel was a mild-mannered accountant, a man who believed in following the rules and caring for one's community. He often reminded Marcus to remain cautious whenever curiosity got the better of him. "I'm fine," Marcus muttered, though his voice was a little shaky. "Just got a lot on my mind." His mother, Rebecca, gave him a warm look from across the kitchen. "School project, or something else?" She was a kind soul, working part-time at a local health clinic, known for her empathetic nature. Marcus had once watched her calmly help a distraught neighbor who'd cut her hand on broken glass, never losing composure despite the blood. The memory of the faint sob pressed on him like a heavy weight. He wanted to say something but hesitated, worried they'd think he was imagining it or that they would forbid him from going anywhere near Blackwood House. Instead, he collected his backpack and mumbled a goodbye, hoping the school day might clear his head. Of course, the mystery did not dissolve so easily. By late afternoon, Marcus found himself walking the same route he had taken the previous day, heading toward the looming shape of the old mansion. He told himself he just wanted to confirm whether the noise had been real or some trick of the wind. The sidewalk felt unusually quiet. Even the usual chatter of kids heading home was absent. As he neared the property, the rusty gate came into view, swaying gently in the breeze. This time, a feeling of anticipation gnawed at him. He was aware of the risk. Abandoned houses often harbored more than just rumors. Broken glass, unstable flooring, and occasionally people looking for a place to hide. Yet he couldn't ignore the moral dilemma forming in his head. If someone truly was in trouble, turning away now might be dangerous for them. After a quick scan to ensure no one was watching, Marcus slipped through the gate again. A swirl of leaves chased his feet across the overgrown front yard. Up close, the mansion's worn facade felt even more oppressive, as if its hollow windows were silently judging him. He tiptoed across the sagging porch, wincing at each creak of the weathered boards. Broken lanterns hung on either side of the front door, their glass panels missing or cracked. "Hello," he whispered, pressing his ear against the door. No immediate response. The large bronze doorknob was tarnished and stiff when he tried turning it. It took a firm push for the door to give way, opening into a dimly lit foyer. Dust motes floated in the stale air, shimmering whenever a stray beam of sunlight passed through the cracks in the boarded windows. He swallowed hard, stepping inside. The interior smelled of rot and something else he couldn't place. Perhaps the scent of damp books or old, decaying furniture. The floor beneath the entry rug felt uneven. A grand staircase, missing several banisters, rose to the second floor. Faded wallpaper peeled away in strips, revealing water-stained wood behind it. Everything was silent, save for Marcus's own heartbeat drumming in his ears. "Is anyone here?" he called quietly, voice trembling against the hush. First, there was no reply. He took a few steps, scanning the hallway. A half-open door to the right led to what appeared to be a sitting room, where thick layers of dust coated a velvet couch and an ornate coffee table. Broken picture frames littered a corner, the faces of whoever once lived here blurred by grime. Then, faintly at first, a muted cry echoed from somewhere deeper in the house. Marcus's pulse spiked. He followed the sound down a corridor until he reached another door, this one slightly ajar. Beyond it lay a study with tall windows, their panes smudged and cracked. The light that filtered through illuminated a disturbing sight. A small makeshift bed of cushions on the floor, upon which lay a baby, wrapped in blankets that looked both high quality and unwashed. For a moment, Marcus couldn't move, the reality of the situation paralyzing him. The baby, no older than a few months, had a flushed face, eyes swollen from crying. Tiny fists waved helplessly, as though pleading for attention and comfort. Marcus felt an urgent need to pick up the infant and run straight home, but reason took hold. He wasn't equipped to handle this alone. He fumbled for his cell phone, hands shaking as he dialed 911. The dispatcher's calm, professional tone did little to steady his nerves. He provided the address of Blackwood House, explaining that he'd found an infant abandoned inside. The dispatcher asked if anyone else was present. Marcus cast a fearful glance around the dark corners of the room. "No one else is here," he said, voice taut. Just the baby." The operator instructed him to stay on the line until the police arrived, but static was already creeping into the call. The old walls must have been interfering with reception. Reluctantly, Marcus ended the call and lifted the baby into his arms, carefully supporting the child's head. The infant quieted somewhat, though soft whimpers still punctuated the stale air. Marcus could feel the baby's body warmth through the dirty blankets, and it struck him just how vulnerable a life he now held. Not wanting to wander through the house while carrying the infant, he carefully made his way back to the foyer. Each creak of the floorboards felt like an accusation, as though the house itself were displeased at this intrusion. He waited by the front door, heart pounding, praying that the police would arrive before whoever had left this child came back. Shadows in the corners seemed to shift, fueling his imagination. He wondered if there were others lurking in the upper floors or the basement. It felt like an eternity, but eventually, the sound of sirens cut through the quiet neighborhood. Marcus exhaled a ragged breath of relief as flashing blue lights illuminated the porch. 2 uniformed officers rushed in, followed by paramedics who carefully took the infant from Marcus's arms. He felt torn between immense relief and a wave of sadness, unsure of what would happen next. As the cops swept through the house calling out clearances, "Kitchen clear, second floor clear," Marcus realized he would have to answer a million questions. A swirl of guilt and pride competed in his chest. He had disobeyed his parents' warnings about avoiding abandoned buildings, but had he not, a baby might have remained in harm's way. If courage and foolishness had a line between them, Marcus was standing precariously on it. When a tall, dark-haired detective walked in, wearing a determined expression, Marcus swallowed hard. Something in her eyes said she wasn't just a regular local officer. This was Detective Sarah Chin. With a slight nod, she gestured him over. He could tell from her stance alone that she intended to dig deep into how a 12-year-old boy wound up saving a child in an empty mansion. Little did he know that the answers he gave her would set a complex and dangerous investigation in motion. Sitting in the back of a police cruiser, Marcus huddled beneath a thin blanket the paramedics had given him to ward off shock. He had never expected to ride in a patrol car, let alone be a key witness in an unfolding mystery. Outside the window, the muted bustle of the street formed a surreal backdrop. Neighbors in pajamas peered out of windows, while the swirling lights of emergency vehicles painted the dusk sky. Detective Sarah Chun tapped gently on the half-open car door. She was in her early 30s, short black hair framing a focused face. "May I sit?" she asked softly, and Marcus nodded. She slid in next to him, setting a notepad on her lap. Marcus noticed her badge glinting under the overhead light. "I'm Detective Chun," she began, voice carrying a calm that belied her intense gaze. "I'd like to ask you a few questions, but first, are you okay? Do you need anything?" Marcus glanced down at his hands, which still trembled slightly. "I'm okay," he managed. "I'm just worried about the baby." Chun nodded. "The infant's with paramedics now. They said it looks like the baby's stable, though underweight. We'll know more after a full medical evaluation." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Marcus, can you tell me how you ended up in there?" Sighing, he repeated the story from the beginning. Hearing rumors about Blackwood House, catching a faint sob, and deciding to investigate. He admitted that he came back the next day, unable to ignore the possibility someone was in trouble. Chen's pen scratched across her notepad as he spoke, capturing every detail. After he finished, she rested a comforting hand on his arm. "You did the right thing," she said with a slight smile. "Though next time it might be better to bring an adult first. Abandoned properties are often unsafe." Her tone wasn't scolding but carried a note of caution. Marcus nodded, feeling equal parts validated and guilty. A short while later, another officer approached with a question. Detective Chun stepped out, leaving Marcus momentarily alone in the cruiser. He felt the magnitude of the situation settle on his shoulders. The baby was safe for now, but many questions were still unanswered. Who left the infant there? Why? And was there a more sinister thread running through the old mansion's neglected halls? Before long, Detective Chun returned and motioned for Marcus to follow her. Together, they entered the paramedics' van, where the tiny infant lay wrapped in fresh blankets. The baby blinked up at them, large eyes clouded with confusion. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. "We're checking for dehydration," a medic explained, shining a penlight gently into the infant's eyes. "Also checking for injuries. The baby looks like they were well cared for up until recently." "That's unusual." Marcus and Chun exchanged puzzled glances. Something about the child's pristine but soiled blanket, combined with the half-finished formula bottle an officer had found in the study, suggested that whoever had looked after the infant did so with attentive care, at least initially. Detective Chun scribbled a note, brow furrowing. "Marcus," she said, turning to him, "do you remember seeing anything else in the study that might stand out? Documents, bags, or perhaps a note?" Images flashed in Marcus's mind. A thick layer of dust on wooden shelves, scattered newspapers, and a framed photograph lying face down on a rickety desk. "I saw a photograph," he recalled. "Couldn't make out who was in it. It was mostly covered in dust." Chun nodded, her expression reflecting the many unknowns ahead. She asked him to wait outside while she conferred with other officers, occasionally stepping into the battered mansion to inspect the rooms. Marcus stood on the front porch, arms crossed against the chill. He could see traces of the baby's makeshift bed through the open doorway, a stark reminder of how delicate life could be. Eventually, Detective Chun emerged, dusting cobwebs from her blazer. "The place has signs of recent occupancy," she reported, "but it doesn't look like someone was living here comfortably. More like they had no other choice. The question is, why abandon a baby?" That evening, after a flurry of paperwork and endless questioning, Marcus's parents arrived, frantic with worry. Rebecca wrapped him in a tight hug, scolding him gently for taking such a risk, but also praising him for his compassion. Daniel patted Marcus's back, exhaling a breath that signaled a cocktail of relief and anxiety. Detective Chun approached them, phone in hand. "We're bringing in specialists to look at evidence from the study. Given the baby's condition, we suspect that someone cared for them quite well during pregnancy. But then something changed drastically in the past few weeks. We'll keep you informed." Marcus's mother thanked the detective, placing a reassuring hand on her son's shoulder. The Wheeler family then walked home under the watchful eyes of curious neighbors. For the first time in his life, Marcus felt the weight of real responsibility and the swirling complexities of adult problems. He was a child, yes, but he had stumbled into an adult reality that demanded attention and empathy. That night, as he lay in bed, Marcus replayed the events in his mind. The baby's soft whimpers echoed in his memory, and he found himself both haunted and determined. He vowed to remember every detail, every impression of that dusty study, in case it might help. Though he knew the investigation belonged to the police, he couldn't escape the sense that his sharp eyes and thoughtful nature might uncover something that the grown-ups would overlook. Across town, Detective Chun returned to the station to make phone calls, her mind spinning with leads. She had transferred recently from San Francisco, where she specialized in missing persons cases. This situation felt eerily familiar. A vulnerable individual, well cared for at first, only to end up in mysterious circumstances. As she pored over preliminary reports, the image of a frightened baby in an abandoned mansion wouldn't let her go. She knew from experience that sometimes the smallest clues, or the quietest witnesses, cracked a case wide open. The following morning, a crisp wind swept through the Wheeler household, rattling window panes and bending tree branches. Marcus was already dressed for school when a knock sounded on the front door. Daniel opened it to find Detective Chun, accompanied by a forensic specialist named Officer Bailey, a young woman wearing a gray jacket embroidered with the department's insignia. "We'd like to revisit the mansion," Chun explained. "Marcus told me about a photograph in the study. We're hoping he can show us exactly where he found it. I realize this is an unusual request, but time might be of the essence." Rebecca exchanged worried glances with Daniel, but ultimately they allowed it, provided Marcus remained under close supervision and was brought straight home after. Within the hour, Marcus found himself back at the entrance to Blackwood House, feeling a curious mix of trepidation and excitement. The building loomed as it had before, though now the front yard and porch were scattered with evidence markers, camera flashes, and uniformed personnel combing every inch of the property. Inside, the stale air seemed thicker with so many bodies moving around. Detective Chun guided Marcus to the study while Officer Bailey photographed peeling wallpaper and crumbling baseboards. The makeshift bed was gone, collected as evidence, but a few scattered cushions remained. Marcus pointed to the desk where he had seen the photograph. An evidence bag now lay there, containing the frame he recalled. Officer Bailey carefully opened the evidence bag. The photograph was faded at the edges, but showed a young woman with wavy blonde hair, smiling next to an older couple in front of a wooded lake. The angle suggested a candid moment, full of life and warmth. A small gold plate on the bottom read, "Caroline Lambert, 2018. Summer at Lake Pinehurst." Chun exhaled, eyebrows arching. "Lambert. That's a well-known family in Boston," she murmured, exchanging a look with Bailey. "Philanthropists. Their daughter, Caroline, was rumored to have gone missing a while back." Marcus's ears perked up. "Missing? You think that's her baby?" Chun met his gaze, expression guarded. "It's too soon to say, but it's a possibility. The baby has features that might match. Our next step is to contact the family, verify if Caroline is indeed missing, and find out why someone would be staying here under these conditions." Officer Bailey packed the photograph away, nodding for a crime scene tech to dust the desk and surrounding floor for fingerprints. Marcus hovered at the threshold, absorbing the drama unfolding around him. Police officers measured footprints on the dusty floor, calling out to each other about the shoe size. Another group found scraps of half-written notes in the next room, collecting them with tweezers and sealing them in plastic bags. The entire house felt alive with the promise of newly uncovered secrets. As they left the mansion, Detective Chun pulled Marcus aside. "I know this is a lot to take in, but you handled yourself well, especially considering your age. Still, I want you to let us handle the investigation from here." Marcus nodded, part of him relieved to pass on the weight of responsibility. Yet a spark of curiosity lingered. Who was Caroline Lambert, and how did she end up in this decaying old structure? That question echoed through his mind as Officer Bailey drove him back home. Late that afternoon, while Marcus tried to focus on homework, the telephone rang. He overheard his mother's muffled voice, tense yet calm. After hanging up, Rebecca appeared in the doorway, expression unsettled. "That was Detective Chun," she said softly, folding her arms. "It seems the baby has been identified as belonging to the Lambert family. She wanted us to know. in case Marcus hears anything at school or from neighbors. The media might pick up on the story soon. The news left Marcus with a surge of conflicting emotions. Relief that the child was identified and anxious curiosity about the fate of Caroline Lambert. He was old enough to recognize that people from wealthy families didn't just vanish without it becoming front-page news. Yet, here was a baby found in an abandoned house, with no sign of the mother, except a weathered photograph. That night, as he scrolled through local news on a tablet, he found a brief article speculating about the mansion discovery. It mentioned an unidentified infant recovered from an abandoned property, and that the police were actively investigating ties to a missing person case. Comments below the article ranged from sympathy for the baby to baseless rumors about cult activity. Marcus felt a wave of discomfort reading it all. Meanwhile, Detective Chun worked late into the night at the station, piece by piece forming a timeline of Caroline's disappearance. The well-known Lambert family had reported her missing months ago, though details were sparse. She had been a promising medical student, known for her intelligence and dedication. A rift with her family had led to a period of estrangement. Why or how she ended up at Blackwood House was still a puzzle. Even more puzzling was why an otherwise privileged young woman would live amid dust and decay, pregnant and isolated. Forensic analysis confirmed that the blankets wrapping the baby were of high quality, likely bought from an upscale children's boutique. Yet the child showed signs of recent neglect, diaper rash and mild dehydration. Chen's colleagues posited that someone had cared well for the baby early on but perhaps was forced to abandon him. The detective's mind swirled with theories. One thing was certain. The deeper she dug, the more the lines between wealth, secrecy, and desperation blurred. News vans clogged the otherwise tranquil streets near Blackwood House by the next morning. Journalists flocked to the scene, pressing for details. Police had cordoned off the property, but that didn't stop cameras from capturing every angle of the tattered mansion. Neighbors stood in small clusters, exchanging bits of gossip. Marcus, on his way to school, wove through the crowd, trying to avoid becoming part of any sensational story. He found his usual seat in homeroom, but the excited hum of conversation made focusing difficult. Word had traveled fast. Marcus Wheeler found a baby in that creepy house. Students bombarded him with questions, many of which he could barely answer. Some teased him, but mostly they were curious. Did he see a ghost? Were there syringes on the floor? Did the baby belong to some secret cult? Their imaginative speculations made Marcus uneasy. He caught the concerned glance of his homeroom teacher, who hushed the rowdy students, letting the matter rest for the remainder of class. The day dragged on, and by the time Marcus left school, he felt drained. He trudged home, backpack heavy with unread textbooks. Waiting on the front steps of his house was Detective Chun, tapping her foot anxiously. She greeted him with a nod. "Sorry for ambushing you like this," she said, stepping aside so he could unlock the front door. "I've just spoken with the Lambert family's lawyer. Caroline's parents refused to speak publicly, but they've confirmed that Caroline went missing several months ago, right after a falling out. They also confirmed the baby is hers, though we don't have official DNA results yet." Marcus set his backpack down in the foyer, listening intently. If they know Caroline was missing, why didn't they look in places like Blackwood House? That seems odd. Chun sighed, scanning the living room as if searching for a discreet conversation spot. Apparently, Caroline was estranged from them and left no clues about where she might go. They assumed she was living in another part of the city or possibly out of state. No one expected her to turn up in an abandoned mansion, let alone with a newborn. Rebecca and Daniel appeared from the kitchen, nodding politely to the detective. After a round of greetings, they all sat around the dining table. Detective Chun explained the newest developments, choosing her words carefully so as not to overwhelm Marcus. Yet the harsh reality of the situation was plain. A woman from a prestigious background vanished, turned up living in squalid conditions with a baby who now, by all accounts, was under the care of Child Protective Services. Caroline's parents insist they haven't heard from her since her disappearance. Chun continued. There's also talk that she had trouble at university, possibly over a personal relationship with a faculty member. But we have no confirmation. Right now, we're dealing with a swirl of rumors. Marcus recalled the framed photograph, Caroline smiling in better times. He remembered how it had been hidden under dust, as though she herself wanted to remain unseen. His mind raced with possibilities. Maybe she had been trying to escape an unhealthy situation, or was scared to return home due to familial pressures. Perhaps an unsafe relationship was part of the puzzle. Chun rose to leave, offering a weary smile. I'll be in touch if there are further developments. In the meantime, Marcus, please keep your head down and stay safe. Reporters might keep hounding you, but you don't owe them anything. Let us handle the rest. With that, Detective Chun left, her posture betraying the weight of the case on her shoulders. Marcus gazed at the closed door for a moment, that old tug of conscience stirring in him. He wanted to help but didn't know how. Days passed. Autumn leaves continued to fall, blanketing the neighborhood in a mosaic of reds and golds. The media frenzy gradually died down as new headlines took over. Yet, for those directly involved, the tension remained. Marcus found little else to think about, replaying details from the dusty study, searching his memory for any overlooked clue. The baby's cry still echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of how precarious life could be. One blustery afternoon, a black sedan pulled up outside the Wheeler home. Marcus peered through the curtains, heart lurching when he recognized the driver stepping out. It was Charles Lambert, Caroline's father, a man known for his philanthropic work and austere manner. Dressed in a tailored suit, he made his way to the door, hat in hand, shoulders tense. Rebecca answered, her polite greeting subdued. Charles asked if he might speak with Marcus, explaining he wanted to extend his gratitude. Marcus joined them in the living room, feeling small under the businessman's appraising gaze. I wanted to thank you, son, Charles said quietly, voice trembling just enough to betray his emotional turmoil. You saved my granddaughter's life. None of this should have happened. My wife and I well, we're still in shock. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I'm glad she's safe. I just wish that Caroline was okay, too. Charles swallowed hard. We all do. We've had difficulties with our daughter, but we never imagined she'd vanish like this. He paused, glancing around the modest but cozy living room. The truth is, we're concerned something terrible happened. Caroline wouldn't just abandon her child. No matter how angry she was, Marcus chewed his lip, recalling the atmosphere in Blackwood House. It hadn't felt like a place someone would choose to stay without reason. Before he could respond, Charles dug into his coat pocket, producing a small envelope. This is for you. Just our way of saying thanks. It's not much, but, he trailed off, pressing the envelope into Marcus's hands. Marcus looked to his parents, uncertain. Daniel and Rebecca thanked Charles for his generosity but insisted it wasn't necessary. Charles offered a wan smile, eyes heavy with worry, and left soon after. When the envelope was opened, it revealed a heartfelt letter and a gift card to a local electronics store, an attempt at expressing gratitude. Marcus felt more uncomfortable than ever. He wasn't in this for rewards, he wanted closure. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, Marcus sat on his bed, rereading Caroline's name in the letter from Charles Lambert. He remembered the baby's tiny face, the muffled cries that had haunted him enough to push open the mansion door. A surge of resolve flowed through him. He had stumbled into this case by chance, but something told him it wasn't over. For Caroline Lambert's sake, and for the baby he had temporarily cradled in his arms, he hoped someone would piece together the rest of the puzzle before it was too late. Outside, the chilly wind carried echoes of changing seasons, drifting across the empty streets. Blackwood House, now under tight police supervision, stood as a silent monument to the mysteries it sheltered. And somewhere, Marcus suspected Caroline Lambert was out there, caught in a story that had yet to be fully told. Below are the final 5 chapters, chapters 6 through 10, continuing directly from where the previous installment ended. The narrative weaves together the discoveries made so far, culminating in a resolution that addresses every crucial plot thread. Care has been taken to avoid unnecessary repetition, ensuring a cohesive and satisfying conclusion. The total word count is approximately. Detective Sarah Chun eased her sedan into a narrow parking space outside a mid-century building on Boston University's medical campus. Early morning light shimmered off the glass facades across the street, and students bustled around in white coats, discussing research or sipping coffee to prepare for the day. She had arrived to speak with Dr. James Whitman, the professor rumored to have been intimately involved with Caroline Lambert. Officially, Chun was here as part of her missing person investigation. Unofficially, she wanted to find out how the professor fit into the puzzle. Chun had arranged the meeting through the university's administration, presenting her badge and stating that new information had emerged regarding Caroline's disappearance. The department chair had been cooperative, albeit guarded. Whitman was highly respected, known for his groundbreaking research and charismatic teaching style, so the idea that he might be connected to something sinister caused discomfort among the faculty. Stepping into the main atrium, Chun smelled fresh paint and disinfectant. An assistant guided her to an office lined with academic journals and framed diplomas. Dr. James Whitman rose from behind a sleek desk, greeting her with a brief nod. He was in his early 40s, tall, with neatly combed brown hair and an air of practiced confidence. His polite smile seemed genuine, but his eyes flickered with guarded curiosity. "Detective Chen, it's a pleasure to meet you," he began, gesturing for her to take a seat. "I understand this is about Caroline Lambert. Such a tragedy. Please, how can I help?" Chun recognized the carefully measured tone of someone adept at speaking to officials. "Yes, Dr. Whitman, thank you for meeting with me. Caroline's family mentioned she was a promising student of yours. We also have reason to believe you and Caroline may have had a personal relationship. Can you shed any light on her circumstances before she disappeared?" Whitman's expression grew solemn. "I was one of Caroline's mentors. She showed remarkable aptitude in medical research, especially in pediatric care. It's true our relationship extended beyond mere professor and student, but it was entirely consensual. We had to keep things discreet. University guidelines frown upon such entanglements." Chun studied his posture for signs of falsehood. "When was the last time you spoke with her or saw her in person?" He paused, eyes drifting to the ceiling as if sifting through a mental calendar. "We had an argument months ago. Caroline believed I was too protective, always urging her to reconcile with her parents. She felt she needed to forge her own path. After that confrontation, she ghosted me. I tried reaching out, but her phone was disconnected. Her sudden withdrawal alarmed me, but given her strong-willed nature, I assumed she was taking time for herself." Chun allowed a beat of silence to pass. "Did you know she was pregnant?" He exhaled slowly, lines of tension creasing his forehead. "I had my suspicions, but Caroline never confirmed. She was secretive about personal matters. I'll admit, if the child is hers, there's a chance I'm the father. I'm not proud of the situation, but that's the honest truth." Detective Chun took careful notes. "Have you any theories on why she'd hole up in Blackwood House of all places?" Whitman's shock seemed plausible. "That rundown mansion? I've heard rumors about it. Didn't realize anyone used it. Caroline never mentioned it to me." The conversation concluded with Dr. Whitman offering to provide phone records and any relevant emails, claiming he wished to see Caroline found safely. Though he appeared forthcoming, Chun couldn't shake the feeling that something in his answers rang hollow. She left the campus and decided to contact forensics to determine if any trace evidence linked Whitman's phone or credit cards to the area around Blackwood House. Meanwhile, across town, Marcus Wheeler sat in his middle school lunchroom, half-heartedly chewing on a peanut butter sandwich. Rumors about the abandoned baby had mostly died down, but a handful of classmates still asked him about his detective work, a moniker that made him blush. He wished the situation could vanish into thin air, yet every time he closed his eyes, he recalled the child's frightened cries. After school, he found Detective Chun waiting for him outside the wrought iron fence. She greeted him with a kind smile. "Marcus, I wanted to update you and your parents on the investigation. May I walk with you? They strolled together through the neighborhood, autumn leaves crunching underfoot. Marcus appreciated her warm demeanor. She was firm but never belittled his curiosity. Did you find out anything new about Caroline? He asked quietly. Chen nodded, choosing her words carefully. We're still investigating, but we have leads on someone who might have tried to contact her shortly before she disappeared. Also, the baby's official paternity is pending. If the father is who we suspect, that might explain certain property transactions we've been examining. The corners of Marcus's mind itched with curiosity. Property transactions? Chun gave a gentle laugh. I'm not sure how much I can reveal right now, but let's just say the old mansion is connected to a string of properties purchased under shell companies. It's complicated. The team and I are following the money. Marcus realized how large and interconnected the world of adult secrets could be. His impulsive decision to enter that decaying house had peeled back a layer of everyday normalcy, exposing something darker and more tangled than he'd ever imagined. He decided that he could be an observer, a quiet helper, and trust that Detective Chun would navigate these hidden corridors of power and deceit. By the time he reached his front door, he felt strangely relieved. There was an immense gravity to what was unfolding, but he no longer felt alone. Chun promised to keep him and his parents informed, urging him to stay safe and to focus on school. As she departed, Marcus recognized in her eyes a determination he'd come to admire. She would not let Caroline's fate remain shrouded in mystery, no matter how many obstacles sprang up in her path. A steady rain fell over Boston that weekend, turning sidewalks glossy and making the city lights shimmer against the damp streets. Detective Chun sat in her cramped office, reviewing a thick stack of files obtained from the local courthouse. Each page listed property purchases in the suburbs outside the city center, some under the name of philanthropic trusts, others bought by limited liability companies that functioned like protective shells. A pattern emerged, multiple deeds traced back indirectly to Dr. James Whitman. Her phone buzzed. It was an update from the forensics lab. The text revealed that partial footprints found in the dusty study at Blackwood House matched a pair of expensive men's shoes sold in limited quantities. A purchase record indicated a credit card linked to Whitman. Coupled with the property connections, a picture was beginning to form. He had visited the house possibly more than once and had reason to keep its occupancy hidden. Chun dialed Whitman's number. His voice answered with the same polite composure, though a slight edge of tension now laced his words. Detective, is there progress on locating Caroline? There is. Some developments raise further questions, Chen answered. I'll need you to come in for a more detailed statement. Whitman's response was non-committal, stating only that he was busy with lectures and labs, but that he'd comply soon. She hung up, unsettled by his evasiveness. If he was innocent, why conceal his activities? Later that day, Chun visited the Lambert mansion, a sprawling estate behind tall wrought iron gates and manicured hedges. Charles and Margaret Lambert greeted her in a grand foyer dominated by a crystal chandelier. They led Chun into a sitting room filled with antiques and family portraits. A large fireplace crackled, chasing away the damp chill from outside. Chun got straight to the point. We believe Caroline gave birth at or near full term, but we can't confirm where. We also have indications that a figure close to her may have been instrumental in her disappearance. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Dr. Whitman is under investigation. Charles's jaw tightened. I suspected as much, he said quietly. They were close, too close. I warned her about fraternizing with a mentor, but she wouldn't listen. His wife, Margaret, rubbed her temples. We tried to get her to see reason. We never objected to her personal relationships because of snobbery. We just felt something about Whitman was off. His influence over her grew, controlling. Chin nodded. Did Caroline ever mention finances or property deals involving Whitman? Margaret shook her head. Not to us, but she hinted that he had a side project that wasn't exactly above board. We thought it was just campus gossip. After gleaning more background, Chun exited the estate, her mind swirling. The Lamberts seemed genuinely concerned for their daughter's welfare, though it was clear they had difficulty articulating familial conflict. She reminded herself that a wealthy family's secrets could be just as complex as anyone else's. Meanwhile, Marcus spent the rainy day indoors. He tried finishing homework at the kitchen table, but his mind kept drifting to Caroline, the baby, and the possible involvement of Dr. Whitman. Snippets of overheard conversations replayed in his head. Every detail in his memory, the creak of the mansion's steps, the dust patterns on the study floor, the half-burnt candle he'd glimpsed in an upstairs hallway, took on new significance. He wondered if Detective Chun had discovered that candle or noted the brand. Perhaps an overlooked piece of wax held crucial evidence. Late in the afternoon, there was a soft knock at the Wheelers' front door. Marcus answered to find an unexpected visitor, a young graduate student named Ellen Sawyer, who introduced herself as one of Whitman's lab assistants. She was in her mid-20s, wearing a soaked raincoat and holding a folder close to her chest. "I'm sorry to show up unannounced," she said, voice trembling. "Are you Marcus Wheeler? The boy who found that baby?" Marcus nodded, puzzled. "Yes. My parents are in the living room if you need to talk to them." Ellen shook her head. "Actually, I'd like to speak to you. I have information about Dr. Whitman that might be important." He glanced back anxiously, unsure if letting a stranger in was wise. "Let me get my mom and dad." Moments later, the three of them sat with Ellen in the living room, the folder of papers resting on the coffee table. Ellen looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. "Dr. Whitman is brilliant, but not ethical. I don't want to go to the police until I'm sure of what I'm holding." She opened the folder, revealing financial records, cryptic lab notes, and property documents. "This is an outline of a medical research program Dr. Whitman established. It's unregistered and uses subjects without proper consent. Caroline discovered it, tried to expose him, and vanished soon after." Marcus stared, heart pounding. "You think Caroline is in danger because of him?" Ellen nodded, voice cracking. "Yes. She was collecting evidence, confiding in me that she was terrified. Then one day she just disappeared. Whitman put a freeze on her campus access. He told staff she had mental health issues. I wasn't sure what to believe until I saw the news about the baby." Daniel Wheeler rubbed his eyes. "You need to take this to Detective Chun." Ellen nodded. "I will, but I was afraid Whitman might have eyes everywhere. I know you're connected to the case in an unusual way, Marcus. I figured if I showed you these documents, you'd help ensure they reach the right hands without them magically vanishing." Marcus's chest felt tight. The enormity of the situation was overwhelming, but he recognized this was the missing piece Detective Chun needed to move forward. Carefully, Rebecca Wheeler placed a comforting hand on Ellen's shoulder. "We'll get these into the right hands." Despite the swirling fear, Marcus felt a quiet sense of purpose. He might be just a kid, but he had stumbled onto something big, and now a brave lab assistant was risking her safety to reveal the truth. They arranged a time to meet Detective Chun the next morning, confident that the final pieces were falling into place. Detective Chun spread the new documents across her desk at the local precinct. Ellen Sawyer had handed them over an hour earlier. With each page, Chen's heart pounded. Lab reports, property transactions, and personal correspondence painted a grim picture. Dr. Whitman had established a network of covert medical trials, purchasing neglected properties where he could discreetly house subjects for experimental treatments without oversight. The notion was chilling. Caroline, in discovering his secret, became a liability. Chun reached for her phone, intending to get a warrant. The precinct captain approved the move without hesitation. She also contacted the Lamberts, explaining the revelations and cautioning them to stay on alert. In the swirl of new developments, Chun nearly forgot to coordinate with Child Protective Services about the baby, but a quick call confirmed the infant was stable, placed with a loving foster family until the mother's fate was determined. When she contacted Whitman's office, he was not answering. A clerk reported he was away at a conference, though that detail had not been on his schedule. Chin suspected he was on the run or, at the very least, anticipating a confrontation. She dispatched a small team of officers to keep watch on his known properties. If he showed up, they would be ready. While the police prepared to raid any locations linked to Whitman's clandestine research, Marcus found himself pacing in his living room. Restlessness gnawed at him. He couldn't focus on any of his usual activities. The sense that events were reaching a critical juncture made the everyday routine of homework and chores feel trivial. Watching the clock, he waited for word from Detective Chun, hoping for news about Caroline's whereabouts. As night fell, the phone rang. It was Chun. Her voice crackled with urgency. "Marcus, is your mother or father available? There's something you all should hear." Seconds later, Daniel and Rebecca crowded around the receiver. Chen's tone was brisk. "We've identified a property outside the city, near the foothills, that belongs to one of Whitman's shell companies. A caretaker mentioned seeing a woman resembling Caroline Lambert escorted in and out by a man with a passkey. We have reason to believe she might still be there, possibly under duress. We're mobilizing now." Marcus clutched the edge of a nearby armchair, eyes wide. He could almost feel Caroline's fear, imagining her trapped, unable to reach her baby. Her attempts at whistleblowing cut short. Detective Chun continued, "I wanted you to know because this is all about to break open. If Caroline is found and stable, we'll get her immediate medical attention and contact the Lamberts. I'll keep you posted." That night brought little sleep for the Wheeler family. Marcus lay in bed, replaying everything from his first eerie visit to Blackwood House up to Ellen Sawyer's revelations. He prayed that Caroline was still alive, that the baby would soon be reunited with her, and that justice would be served to those responsible for this nightmarish situation. Early the next morning, a convoy of law enforcement vehicles sped along a winding road that led to a secluded estate partially hidden by tall pines. Detective Chun reviewed tactical plans on-site, distributing tasks to a team of uniformed officers and plainclothes investigators. The caretaker, who had cooperated, provided a code to bypass the electronic gate. The property itself was an imposing structure, a gated compound featuring several low-slung buildings around a main lodge. Fences and spotlights indicated it was built for privacy. As dawn light crept over the horizon, the raid began. Officers fanned out, guns drawn but with an emphasis on caution. Nobody wanted to escalate needlessly. The quiet of the early hour magnified every footstep on gravel. Two detectives approached the largest building, forcibly unlocking the door. Inside, the air felt stagnant, the corridors bathed in artificial white light. Walls bore signs of medical equipment installation. Sterile counters, trays, and locked cabinets. Voices echoed down a hallway. A man in a lab coat, likely an associate of Whitman's, emerged, stunned by the presence of armed officers. He dropped a stack of folders, stammering that everything was legal, but the bluff was easily exposed. Within minutes, multiple staff members were detained, providing information about forced research trials under Dr. Whitman's command. Meanwhile, Detective Chun pressed on, searching each locked door. A commotion broke out near the back of the facility. An officer called for a medic, prompting Chen to hurry over. There, in a small recovery room, they found Caroline Lambert lying on a metal cot, for drip attached to her arm, eyes half-lidded with sedation. Pale but alive, she struggled to focus on the sudden wave of uniformed figures flooding into her space. Chun knelt beside her, heart pounding with relief. "Caroline? We're here to help," she murmured. Caroline blinked, tears forming as recognition sparked. "Please, my baby," she whispered, voice weak. "I had to leave her so someone would find her." Gently brushing damp hair from the young woman's forehead, Chun reassured her that the baby was safe and in good hands. The scene around them was chaotic, but the most critical objective had been met. Caroline was alive. An ambulance was summoned to transport her to a reputable hospital, where doctors could treat the aftermath of whatever research or sedation she'd been subjected to. As paramedics carried Caroline out, Dr. James Whitman was nowhere to be found on the property. Though other staffers had been apprehended, the man at the center of it all had vanished yet again, leaving behind only the twisted remnants of his secret project. Chun vowed to track him down, holding Caroline's trembling hand briefly before letting the paramedics secure her. The detective promised, "We'll get him, and you'll be safe now." Outside, the sun rose over a scene of confrontation and liberation. Flashing lights revealed the extent of Whitman's operation. Rooms filled with unethical medical records, sedation logs, and patient histories. Despite the horrors uncovered, hope glimmered. Caroline was rescued, the baby would soon be reunited with its mother, and the final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Detective Chun stepped aside to phone the Wheelers, delivering the news that the chain of events started by Marcus's intervention had led to a critical turning point. Marcus listened on speakerphone as Detective Chun revealed that Caroline had been found. Relief mixed with an electric sense of triumph. He, his parents, and even the neighbors who had followed the story closely felt a collective burden lift. Yet one question loomed. Where was Dr. Whitman? While Caroline received emergency care, Chan and her team delved into the evidence seized from the compound, establishing formal charges. Statements from staffers and documentation were damning. Unauthorized drug trials, false patient records, coerced confinement. Caroline, it appeared, had refused to support these unethical studies, intending to expose them once she'd gathered enough proof. In retaliation, Whitman had manipulated her financially and psychologically, eventually confining her to the private facility to keep her silent. The Lambert family arrived at the hospital early that afternoon. Margaret Lambert rushed into Caroline's room, embracing her daughter despite the IVs and monitors. Charles followed behind, tears in his eyes. Their reunion, fraught with apologies and relief, became a moment of emotional catharsis. Caroline, too exhausted to speak in detail, simply wept in her mother's arms. By evening, the baby was brought in under the watchful eye of Child Protective Services. The sweet moment when Caroline cradled her infant again sent a wave of compassion through even the most stoic hospital staff. She whispered words of comfort, tears of gratitude staining her cheeks. Detective Chun, standing at the threshold with medical staff, felt her throat tighten. Such moments reminded her why she fought tooth and nail against injustice. Meanwhile, Marcus and his parents visited the hospital at Caroline's request. They stood awkwardly outside her door, unsure if the timing was right. A nurse peeked out, nodding that they could enter briefly, so in they went. The scene was intimate. Caroline sat propped by pillows, holding her baby close. She glanced up, eyes still red from crying, but a small smile emerged. "You're Marcus," she said, voice raspy. "I owe you everything. If you hadn't come looking..." Marcus blushed. I'm just glad you're safe," he managed, shifting from foot to foot. He added softly, "When I heard the baby crying, I just couldn't walk away." Caroline's gratitude was overwhelming. "Thank you," she said, glancing at her baby's sleepy face. "I hid her in that house because I knew local kids sometimes explored there. It was my only hope. I left documents and the photo, praying someone would connect the dots." Rebecca Wheeler placed a hand on Caroline's shoulder, her own eyes misty. "Your bravery saved your child and exposed Dr. Whitman's crimes." Caroline nodded, though guilt threaded her expression. "I couldn't protect her for those first weeks of her life, but maybe now, she'll have a future free of fear." Detective Chun quietly entered, offering updates on the hunt for Whitman. Local airports had been alerted, roads monitored, and his university office sealed. Within hours, a tip came in from a small charter airfield. A man matching Whitman's description attempted to rent a plane but fled when asked for identification. With every passing minute, the net tightened. Later that night, Marcus and his family returned home, hearts still pounding from the encounter with Caroline. They couldn't stop discussing the courage she'd shown. The unexpected strength gleamed from her maternal instinct and the labyrinth of conspiracies she had navigated. Marcus felt changed by the experience. No longer merely a curious 12-year-old, but someone who had witnessed both the darkness of human greed and the power of individual compassion. For the next 2 days, headlines blared about Dr. Whitman's illicit activities. News stations interviewed former patients, some of whom described suspicious incidents or pressured participation in experimental therapies. University faculty scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal, claiming ignorance of Whitman's shadowy side. Rumors circulated about hush money and falsified research data. The entire city buzzed with outrage that such a scheme had operated under their noses. At last, Word arrived that law enforcement agents had apprehended Whitman in a motel north of Boston. He'd been traveling under an alias, presumably trying to wait out the heightened surveillance until he could flee the region. Police found him with false documents, a large sum of cash, and a loaded handgun. When the news broke, a palpable wave of relief spread through the hospital corridors, the Lambert estate, and the Wheeler household alike. The threat that had loomed large was now firmly in custody, awaiting trial on multiple felony charges. For Caroline, justice was finally within reach, though her recovery, both physical and emotional, would take time. For Detective Chun, a career built on missing person cases now had another success story, albeit one that tested her resolve. For Marcus, the entire ordeal signaled a profound lesson in empathy and courage. As the final pieces of the investigation snapped into place, the entire community prepared for an ending that might, at last, bring healing and closure. 2 weeks had passed since Dr. Whitman's arrest. Autumn's fiery palette had begun to fade, leaves scattering across Boston streets in a farewell gesture to the season. Inside a bright hospital conference room, the legal proceedings ramped up. Lawyers circled around the case like hawks, collecting statements and building arguments. Caroline Lambert, though still frail, managed to record her official testimony from her hospital bed. Detective Chun, the Lamberts, and various support personnel coordinated to ensure that Whitman's manipulations would face the full brunt of the law. Marcus Wheeler, however, saw only small fragments of this whirlwind. His life had begun slipping back to normal school, chores, occasional outings with friends. Yet the events of the past weeks had redefined his perspective. Every time he looked at the grocery store on the corner, he recalled how an ordinary errand had led him down a path of moral responsibility. His parents, likewise, treated him differently, no longer seeing just a child but a person capable of making tough, ethically driven choices. One crisp afternoon, Caroline Lambert and Detective Chun arrived at the Wheeler home for a final, more personal gathering. Caroline, wearing a soft sweater, looked healthier than before, color having returned to her cheeks. She carried her baby in a snug wrap, the infant's bright eyes taking in the world. Detective Chun followed with a small gift bag, a rare smile gracing her otherwise focused demeanor. They settled in the living room, exchanging pleasantries and cups of warm cider. Marcus couldn't help stealing glances at the baby, who gurgled and fidgeted, blissfully unaware of the turmoil that had surrounded her birth. Caroline noticed his curiosity and gently invited him to hold the baby if he felt comfortable. Tentative but eager, Marcus cradled the tiny form, recalling with vivid intensity the day he first found her in that dusty old study. Caroline's eyes shone with gratitude. "She's safe now because of you. I'll never forget that." Rebecca Wheeler brushed away a tear. "We're just relieved that all of this ended without greater tragedy." Detective Chun set down her mug. "We have formal charges against Whitman and several of his associates. The DA intends to pursue maximum sentencing, given the severity of what they did." Caroline's testimony, along with the material Ellen Sawyer provided, was instrumental. Caroline nodded. "I'm still processing it all, my family, the baby, the trial. But each day is a bit easier. My parents and I are working through our differences, and we plan to take things step by step." Daniel Wheeler, sipping cider beside Rebecca, broke into a supportive smile. "Take as long as you need. Everyone heals in their own way." In the midst of adult conversation, Marcus felt both included and awed by how much had happened. He gazed at the baby, who kicked her tiny legs. "Does she have a name yet?" he asked gently. Caroline nodded, a soft blush creeping into her cheeks. "I've chosen Grace." It seemed fitting, given the miracle of her safe rescue. "Grace," Marcus echoed, smiling. The child's name seemed to encapsulate hope, resilience, and the quiet miracle that had unfolded in Blackwood House. A sudden wave of memory washed over him. The wide, musty hallway, the broken window, and the swirling dust motes illuminated by a streak of golden light. That initial decision, his moral dilemma, had blossomed into a life-altering experience. He realized that every small action, every tiny choice, held the potential for massive repercussions. Sometimes, The impetus for change arrived as a faint cry in a deserted house. Detective Chun rose, placing a discreetly wrapped box on the coffee table. "This is from the precinct. A little token of our appreciation, Marcus." Inside, Marcus found a plaque inscribed with simple words, "For bravery and compassion beyond measure." His cheeks warmed with embarrassment and pride, while his parents blinked back tears. Caroline stood, adjusting the baby wrap, ready to leave. "I can't wait until I'm able to properly thank you with dinner or something less formal. For now, I just wanted to show my gratitude in person." They made their way to the door, exchanging hugs and kind words. Caroline lingered a moment longer, looking directly at Marcus. "You remind me of the best parts of myself. The parts that believed in doing what's right, even when it's dangerous." Marcus was speechless, so he simply nodded, hugging her and the baby gently. As Caroline and Detective Chun departed, he watched from the front window, the crisp wind rustling their coats. Once the door closed, silence filled the home. Yet it wasn't the silence of abandonment. Rather, a peaceful pause after a storm, a testament to how tragedy had forged unexpected bonds. Over the ensuing weeks, with the case heading to trial, normal life gradually reasserted itself. Marcus attended classes, played pickup soccer, and flipped through comics at the local bookstore. Detective Chun returned to her regular caseload, though she occasionally checked in with the Wheelers to ensure everyone was well. The Lambert family focused on reconciliation, addressing years of unspoken tension and miscommunication. Blackwood House, now recognized as a site of significance in the criminal case, was slated for auction by the city. Some advocated for its demolition, while others argued it should stand as a testament to the courage and compassion that emerged from its haunting shadows. Marcus felt a pang of nostalgia passing by its towering outline, remembering how it once seemed a monolith of fear but had transformed into a symbol of hope. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, Caroline and Grace visited the Wheelers again, this time bringing homemade pastries. They sat in the backyard, letting the baby crawl on a blanket in the soft grass. Detective Chun dropped by too, off-duty and relaxed, revealing a sense of humor rarely seen in her professional capacity. The informal get-together felt like a celebration of life's resilience, a testament that even in the face of cruelty, goodness could prevail. Caroline handed Grace to Marcus, smiling as the baby reached for his nose. "She'll grow up hearing the story of how a boy's kindness saved her," she said. "I hope it makes her proud and brave." Marcus's heart swelled. He glimpsed his parents exchanging proud smiles, their reassurance granting him a sense of belonging in this new, extended circle of friends. He felt Detective Chen's hand on his shoulder, a silent affirmation of his role in unraveling a complex tragedy. Epilogue in motion as the afternoon sun lit up the yard, Marcus reflected on how a single choice had ignited a chain reaction. He'd followed a mysterious cry, disobeying his parents' warnings, motivated by an inner voice that demanded compassion. That choice led to Caroline's rescue, Grace's protection, and the downfall of an insidious operation. In time, Dr. Whitman would face a courtroom, and Caroline would navigate her path toward healing. Standing there, he realized that sometimes the greatest journeys start not with a grand plan, but with a small step guided by conscience. And though life would undoubtedly move forward, weaving new mysteries and challenges, the echoes of Blackwood House would remain with him always, a reminder that the faintest cry could become the strongest catalyst for truth, hope, and the binding power of compassion.